Treats are essentially your biggest weapon when working with a high anxiety animal to help them feel more comfortable. I can totally relate. Welcome back. So lately I've been feeling stressed. My anxiety has been through the roof, so I thought it was a really fitting time to discuss something that is huge in shelter medicine and sheltering in general: Fear Free. Now, if you haven't heard of Fear Free, which you probably haven't unless you're in the field, Fear Free is a combination of housing and handling techniques that helps relieve fear, anxiety, and stress in animals while they're in the shelter environment. Now, there's an entire program you can go through to become Fear Free certified. A lot of shelters are kind of making it a goal to have their entire staff be certified. The benefit to having everyone certified is that all of your handling and your housing is going to be the same across the board, no matter who is working with those animals. Having everyone doing the same thing is going to give them that consistency and really assure them that this is an okay place. It's really going to help us build trust and reduce the number of behavior instances that we might see. So a number of these are also used in vet med, not just in a shelter clinic, but they can be used in other clinics as well. The goal for that is to make the experience of going to the vet less scary, making sure that they can get whatever care they need in a safe and comfortable way that's not stressful for them. So this is going to be a really quick rundown of the Fear Free model. I'll leave the link below to the course and everything. You can sign up if you want. You do have to pay. I think it is something that every tech should learn. I can't tell you what a difference utilizing some of these techniques has made in animals I've seen during my time in the field. The more we utilize it, the more lives we're going to save. So the basis of Fear Free handling is recognizing animal emotion, and that is so that you know when an animal is scared or stressed or anxious, anything like that. So the major behaviors we see in animals in the shelter that are feeling any fear, anxiety, or stress are hiding or avoidance, avoiding eye contact or avoiding us like physically, hyperarousal, so barking and jumping, rushing the kennel door, and other typically aggressive behaviors, growling, hissing, swatting, all of that stuff. Like we talked about before, the behavior team will usually do a general assessment of every animal that comes into the shelter. If they are able to do actual tests and get, workable results, then they can kind of figure out whether it's the environment in general or a specific trigger that is causing the animal to feel fearful or anxious. So for that, they're looking at whether they are lunging or growling like just at men, or is it everyone that walks by? Or are they trying to avoid everyone? Or is it just when there's a loud noise like a door slamming? So if there is a clear trigger, the behavior team is going to work with them on that. They're going to use something called systematic desensitization. So that is a controlled way of exposing the animal to the trigger and working with them to respond to it less and less. And then over multiple training sessions, they will increase that trigger to the point where the animal is not responding at all to it. So one example of this is for a dog who might be rushing the kennel when other dogs walk by. So they will work with members of their team or even volunteers. So someone will be in their kennel with the dog, and then volunteers or people will walk dogs by, and they will work on training them like with clickers and treats and things like that to get them less focused on what's going on outside of their kennel and be more comfortable when they're in there and know that those dogs walking by are not going to come into their kennel and attack them, or they're not in any danger when an animal walks by. So if there isn't a clear trigger, obviously we would look for a foster home for them, but if one isn't available, they're going to put different housing techniques into place and then work with them when they come out of their kennel to kind of desensitize them to the shelter. This is through a process called habituation. The difference between habituation and systematic desensitization is that in habituation, the trigger stays the same throughout the whole process. So systematic desensitization, they are kind of upping the ante to push the animal to ignore the trigger, whereas habituation, they are just getting used to the way the trigger is all the time, no matter what. So basically, we're teaching them that the shelter has no effect on them. We are trying to make them feel more comfortable as best we can so that they can learn that this is a safe place and nothing bad is going to happen. So a lot of the things that are happening outside of medical standpoint are around housing techniques. So for example, if you have a really fearful cat, they might be put into an office or some other kind of suite or something so that they aren't in the main kennels so that they can have more time to come out of their shell. They may be on hold for a little bit longer, but it's just kind of giving them time to process the world around them and get used to all the sights and sounds and smells that happens every day at a shelter. So they'll be given ample places to hide so they can come out on their own for interaction. It is a good way to kind of isolate them but not completely cut them off from everything that's going on in a shelter. So especially for cats, we always make sure that they have some place to kind of hide. So usually you have some kind of like maybe a bed with a towel over it, maybe a carrier, maybe a hidey box, which is like a cardboard box that they can kind of go into. So giving them places to hide, and then maybe covering their kennels as well, just so they're less stimulated by everyone walking by. And then a big thing too is having volunteers and staff that can sit with them and work with them, maybe just feeding them treats and getting them more comfortable with people reaching into their kennels for cleaning and things like that. So they might offer them really tasty treats to get them to pet them, or just get them comfortable with the presence of a person in their space. So for dogs, treats are going to be the key to their heart. So it's going to help them open them up, ensure them that they're not in danger. So they might also live in offices, or if some shelters have like separate suites, they might be moved to one of those. Honestly, for some, any kind of mental engagement will help them relax and give them something to focus on and something to do instead of just worrying about everything around them. Obviously, that doesn't work for all of them. They have to be very highly motivated to, respond to treats and respond to commands and like want something to do. If they are willing to kind of do those things, it really goes a long way to taking them out of that fearful mindset and makes it so they can at least try to ignore everything else going on and all of the triggers around them. Recently, I had a patient who was very reactive when he came in. He really wasn't sure of any people. He actually lunged at the doctor when she was trying to examine him. So I kind of worked with him once we started like training, and he is a puppy. He's like 5 months, but a big puppy. So once we started working on these basic commands, he was really like eager to learn, and he loved treats. So it was really easy to kind of refocus him. And once he got going with his like commands and he realized there was a routine here and he got treats from it and he was doing what was asked of him, he really opened up so much more. The only thing he did by the time he left was like bark at new sounds. So he was much more engaged and he really didn't react as much. He might bark at new people, but he would kind of allow them to engage with him. Now, the biggest fear-free techniques are for handling. The biggest technique is using something called gentle control. This is a technique where we're keeping control of the animal, but we're not completely restricting their ability to move, and we're not getting aggressive with it. Like, we're not pinning them down and holding them still. For example, when we're removing a dog from their kennel, we're going to stand in a non-threatening position. We're going to offer them treats. All of that is going to allow us to leash them and bring them out of their kennel without any stress, and it's going to allow us to do that in a safe way. So for cats and small dogs, we might use a towel to kind of put around them and scoop them up and then put them in a carrier, or just carry them in a towel if it's a dog. So we can also use that to keep their heads covered so that they are less triggered by everything going on. So we also use a certain number of tries when we're trying to do something with an animal. So every time you are handling an animal or trying to handle them, the level of fear, anxiety, and stress is going to be increased. So usually we'll do about 3 tries for dogs and 2 for cats. So that's like 3 tries to pick them up, 3 tries to leash them, 3 tries to get them to walk by all the other kennels, 3 tries to get them in a carrier. So after the specific number of tries, the handler will remove themselves from the animal and allow them to settle down before attempting again. So sometimes that in the shelter environment, that will mean waiting until the next day, and sometimes it'll mean just waiting like an hour or 2. It depends on what needs to be done. So for medical procedures, we try to do the certain number of tries, but sometimes that's not feasible. Things might need to be done, certain procedures might need to be done no matter what, because the animal is in a life-threatening situation, or they have the potential to be in a life-threatening situation. They need to have a procedure done to avoid that issue or to address it. For a lot of things, if the animal is otherwise healthy, we will frequently opt for sedation. We call it better living through chemicals. Well, staff should be working with an animal to increase the amount of handling that the animal will allow. So sedation might be the best for animals who are working on those things, but need to have something done right away, like taking x-rays or replacing a bandage or a splint or things like that. So sedating them is not going to put them back in their progress for training and handling, but it is going to allow us to address whatever medical situation they might be dealing with. However, for basic things, there are a lot of things we can do in a clinic to incorporate fear-free techniques and get our jobs done as techs. A lot of these things are for basic wellness exam procedures, so a full physical exam, vaccines, drawing blood, trimming nails, things like that. One of my favorites is when you have one person restraining them like normal, one person feeding them a tasty treat, and then the vet doing whatever they need to do. So when we're doing that, we're using gentle control, but we are restraining them in a way that is going to protect everyone. We are distracting them from whatever is happening, and we're convincing them that the vet is a nice place where they get treats, and we're completing all of the procedure in one go. So we are, not only training them, but we are doing our jobs and we're doing it safely, and oftentimes they don't even know what happened. Treats are also really useful with basic physical exams. So a lot of times when an animal comes into the shelter, they get a full physical exam. So the vet is going to be touching every different part of their body. So their paws, their ears, their mouth, their belly, everything like that. So what I have done in the past is if a dog is willing to take treats, I will feed them treats, have the doctor start, and as the doctor finishes whatever different region they're on, I'll feed them a couple more. So I'm waiting for the vet to finish so that I'm not messing up their exam, but I'm also rewarding them frequently so that they know, hey, you did a good job, let's do it again. Okay, you did a good job again, let's keep going. And then when they're done, obviously they get more treats as well. Again, we're kind of training that dog to be used to being touched in different parts of their body, so on their ears and various different sensitive parts that a lot of animals have problems with. So we're training them to be okay with that. We're distracting them from anything that might be scary, and then we are building that trust with that animal. So especially if you work in general practice, you're going to start building that trust with the animal and the client so that they know, hey, when I see you, I kind of know what's going to happen and I trust you and you're going to give me treats. So the gentle handling kind of comes into play in the clinic as much as we can. Muzzles are kind of a great way to allow for gentle handling, train an animal to be okay with that level of handling. If a dog or a cat allows like basic petting, but they don't allow like full restraint, then a muzzle is a good way to keep everyone safe and then work with them on just being able to do what you need to do without having to like really wrestle them. So I know a lot of people have a lot of feelings about muzzles, but muzzles, especially in a vet clinic, are just a way to keep everyone safe and make sure we can get done what we need to get done. Do that with the least amount of stress and handling as possible. So they're not an indication of a bad dog or cat, they're just an indication of a fearful dog or cat. It may be hard to believe after seeing some of the tantrums I've seen some animals show when we are trying to restrain them just to give them a vaccine. And then once you put on that muzzle, they are like a statue and they allow a quick little poke and then we're done. It's really crazy, but some of them do just feel like, okay, I have to be still now and it'll be over soon. And so working with them when they feel that way is useful for us because we're not putting them back into a scared, a fearful, anxious state, and we are understanding what they want from us and how they feel comfortable, but still doing our job and giving the animal medical care. So a lot of things I do is also when I'm restraining an animal, I will kind of scratch them as I'm restraining them. So that is kind of like a good way to distract. If I have my arm under their neck and my arm under their belly, I'm just like kind of scratching their head, and that can be like a little bit distracting for like a quick little poke. Another thing we'll do for cats is called the V holds. Basically you have your fingers, either these two or like like a Star Trek hold right over their neck, and it's kind of laying against their front shoulder blades, so you have a little bit more control as far as keeping the cat, you know, still in one place. It's not as much restraint and it's not as aggressive as a scruff, but you still have a little bit more control. And then obviously if you have them V-held on their head over here and you have a hand on their back here, you have a little bit more control, but they don't feel as restrained as if they are scruffed. Towel wraps are a huge fear-free technique we use as well. Like I said, when we're picking up animals with the towel, we're kind of doing the same thing, except we're gonna wrap the towel kind of around their neck, maybe covering their head, but not like obviously suffocating them. We're just kind of using it as a wrap around their neck so that they are a little more restrained, and then they have the towel to bite if they want to do that. We can like stick out any kind of leg we need to get to, and then we're gonna be able to do our procedure. So it is a really good way, and I can't tell you how many times a towel has saved my fingers. So that is one of my favorites, especially for cats. One other thing the program touches on is how you present yourself to an animal. So obviously we all know kind of to lean down, be to the side, not just come on to an animal like this. That is a big thing when you're approaching an animal. Also, they will talk about like your tone of voice when you're approaching an animal. So, you know, you want to be very calm. You don't want to be screaming, obviously, but a very calm demeanor, quiet voice, things like that. Something they don't mention is the power of baby talk, which I have seen firsthand. Now, I know baby talk can be really annoying sometimes. I will say I have approached a dog's kennel where the dog was kind of like, you know, avoiding me in the back of the kennel and just not sure, and then I break out that baby talk voice and they are like a wiggly puddle in my hands. Our shelter animals are precious angel babies and they deserve to be treated as such. So that is a little bit about the fear-free techniques we use as shelter workers to make our animals feel a little more comfortable while they're in our care. You can also utilize these techniques on your personal pets. They are great ways to get your animals used to, you know, different things that they're going to encounter when they go to the vet specifically. So getting them okay with all kinds of touch, some kinds of restraint, getting them used to like towels and things and treats especially. And training on some of these techniques is gonna go a long way for when they go to the vet, and it's gonna make it a lot less stressful and a lot more easy on your pet when they have to go get their yearly exam and their vaccines and any kind of testing that they might need. So it can also be really useful for if they're going to go to the groomer. And then when you do get a new pet, it's also useful to use some of these techniques as well as far as the housing goes. So giving them kind of their own room or their own space where they can go and come out at their leisure, giving them places to hide, especially for cats, and then not forcing any kind of interaction. Like, I know we're all really excited to have new pets and we love them already, but we want to make sure that your house is a safe space for them and that they don't feel threatened or forced into something that they don't want. Giving them time to come out and acclimate on their own is going to go a long way to them feeling comfortable and safe in your home. If you have any secret weapons for decreasing stress in animals, I would love to hear about them down below. If you have any questions, feel free to leave those down there as well. And thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.